Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out. It's a real honor to speak here today at the National Press Club. Quick programming note. My mother's here. As a Mother's Day gift for putting up with me for 30 years, I asked her to drive me to D.C. and carry my bags all day as we schlepped around to various meetings. So happy Mother's Day, Mom. Next year, you're getting an enema. In all seriousness, I think it's fitting that she's here today because this topic, American Christianity, probably wouldn't be so interesting to me had I not been raised to respect and appreciate faith and faith differences, as I was. During the period of my childhood when I wanted very much to be a nun, my mother bought me a cross necklace and took me to church services all around town until I complained that it was really boring. And when I was into my New Age, Tibetan, Buddhist, Taoist, Zen, Shalom, Om phase, she bought me magic crystals to keep in an African pouch I insisted on wearing around my neck to Catholic school. And when I thought I might be an atheist, I told her I wanted to go to the Vatican to renounce my Catholic faith. She did the sign of the cross and said, "That's fine. Just don't insult the Pope and let me know how the pizza is." It was great. The pizza was really good. And now, after 5 or 6 years of Catholic school, getting a master's in religious studies, and forging a writing career in part on my obsession with faith in the popular culture, here's where I've landed. I'm a conservative atheist who just wrote a book defending Christianity against the attacks of the secular left. My Roman Catholic liberal grandmother is devastated on both counts. My born-again father is just thrilled that I got to meet Mike Huckabee. Sean Hannity tries to baptize me on the sly every time we're near the water cooler. And my high school Christianity teacher is probably wondering where in the lesson she lost me. And then there's my mom, who I know is probably just amused and proud. And for that, I'm grateful. The thrust of losing our religion is really all in the subtitle. I examine the liberal media's attack on Christianity. And if that sounds alarmist or hysterical, well, that's what pundits do. We feign outrage. But in this case, at least, the outrage is very sincere. A plan is unfolding in every American small town, in every American big city, on the coasts and the heartland, in schools and in libraries, on television and on the radio, in the halls of power and on the sidewalks of Main Street. It's everywhere, and it's not going away. And now, with careful, covert nudges from the Obama administration, a secular revolution that began decades ago has gained unprecedented momentum. The goal of this secular revolution is to overthrow God and silence Christian America, for good. If you think that has nothing to do with you, you're wrong. Whether you join the 90% of believers in the country or you stand with the 10% of the country that does not is incidental. No matter what you believe or how fervently you believe it, this particular war on God, which is just the latest in a string of them since the Enlightenment, is a war on all Americans, atheist, secular, religious, otherwise, not because of whom it targets, but because who is doing the targeting. They're the people you see and hear every day. They're the people you trust. They're people you rely on to tell you what to wear, what to buy, what to drive, what to watch, what to listen to, what to read, where to live, where to visit, where to eat, who to like, who to help, when to go outside, when to stay indoors, when to shop, when to save, what to think, what to believe. They are the media. The people you trust to be fair, accurate, objective, and insightful are the so-called watchdogs of the state, the protectors of truth, the gatekeepers, and the guardians of truth and freedom. The very people are out to shame and mock and subvert and pervert and corrupt and debase and extinguish your beliefs. The beliefs of a vast majority of the country, by the way, and the values upon which this country was founded. They're doing the one thing they're never supposed to do. They're taking sides. And for the great majority, this is problematic enough, but even for the minority, non-Christians and non-believers. This means that their guardians of truth are being dishonest, wholly subjective, and frankly, un-American. Targeting faith is targeting democracy, and that's something that should make every American deeply concerned for the future. So whoever said the revolution wouldn't be televised was totally wrong. It's on television, and it's also on the radio and on the internet, in magazines, newspapers, on the wires. It's being blasted over the airwaves, splashed across the front pages of your favorite magazine and newspapers. And the revolution to overthrow Christian America, to marginalize it to the fringes, to force it to the far corners of the earth, is being led by reporters, writers, commentators, pundits, columnists, editors, producers, critics, and publishers all over the country. People who are laughably and totally inaccurately still referred to as the mainstream media. Edmund Burke said after the French Revolution, gazing upon the press gallery at the House of Commons, "Yonder sits the Fourth Estate, and they are more important than them all." You know, he was half right. It turns out the watchdogs need watchdogs of their own. Freedom of the press has morphed into power of the press. Assuring its freedom was originally born out of an urgency to protect these important watchdogs from the wrath of a controlling and colonial government, giving it the power to criticize authority without retribution, to tell the truth without fear of imprisonment. Now, however, the press has become a political and ideological tool of oppression itself. Instead of watching the state, it's watching you. The press has become so politicized, so self-aware, so self-motivated, so power-hungry, that a careful application of objectivity, and even a careful application of opinion, are no longer the rule, but the very rare exception. In short, these people can no longer be trusted. Your news is filtered through an entirely subjective system of biases and prejudices that look not only to inform your views, but to guide them in one particular direction: left. But the liberalism of the press is only half the story. Less often discussed is the secularism of the press. And in recent years, the mainstream media has begun to reveal its particular antipathy for Christianity with more and more confidence. Why does this matter? Because it puts democracy itself in the crosshairs in three very important ways. One, in targeting Christians, the media is targeting the majority, which actually makes it all the more difficult to see and contain. Majorities get a little complacent. They feel like there's strength in numbers. So they don't always notice that it's happening. Or they make the mistake of feeling invincible, like it doesn't matter what they're saying, we'll always be okay. Two, in unfairly targeting Christians, propagating mistruths against them, the media has broken its promise to be fair and objective. Lastly, the opinion media, by spewing ugly invectives against Christians, have forsaken the dignity, decency, and tolerance that once held our communities together, and instead they're driving them apart. All of this means that the mainstream press really no longer deserves the privilege of controlling the conversation. In the past decade, we haven't become any less Christian, despite the media's routine insistence that we have, nor have we become any less democratic. So the media's decision to target Christian America isn't a response to the changing social mores of the country. It's a deliberate effort to change them, and the media now has a willing accomplice. After spending 8 years railing against the Bush administration for Bush's Christianity, and by proxy, everyone's Christianity, it abandoned any pretenses of objectivity to help usher in a new ideological era under Barack Obama, who represented not only a chance for the kind of radical liberalism most of the media elite espouses, but also a chance for the kind of secularism that most of the media elite regularly promotes. Raised by atheists, uncomfortable with Christ, disconnected from evangelical America, and perceived as too smart to be too religious, Obama's brand of easy, convenient, anemic Christianity was just what the liberal media wanted it to be: totally opportunistic. Working in tandem, the Obama administration and the liberal media are strategically and surgically singling out American Christianity for extinction. And the very nature of this symbiotic relationship means that the two organisms take their cues from each other. Under Bush, the media was on its own in the revolution. Under Obama, it has a willing comrade. The liberal media's portrayal of Christians as fanatics gave Obama the license to accuse them of bitterly clinging to religion. Likewise, Obama's decision to forego a national day of prayer, cover up Jesus' name during a speech at Georgetown, cancel a military flyover at God and Country Day, ad nauseum, gave the liberal media license to ignore, mock, and condescend Christians in their columns, their commentary, and even write in news reports. In both these cases, however, neither Obama nor the liberal press that supports him represent the mainstream opinion. That's the problem. The country is 80% Christian. That's not fringe. That's a majority. It's a vast majority. So in response to Obama, Christians have been appropriately outraged for a number of offenses during his short time in office, and for a political and cultural agenda that is clearly informed by some very leftist progressive tenets. His nod to non-believers in his inaugural address, his continued imprimatur to the superiority of science over faith, his affinity for a Marxist theology, all have conservative Christians worried. But conservatives and Christians have been noticeably absent in their outrage for the media, which is frankly far more influential than Obama is. The media is, after all, in school libraries, classrooms, MTV, VH1. It's on the televisions in your airports, in your bars, sometimes in your elevators. On the radio, it's in stores, in taxis. It's on your computers, it's on your cell phones. Yet Christians, regularly the targets of a vitriolic and intolerant mainstream press, continue to watch MSNBC, CNN, they buy Newsweek, they buy Time magazine, they read the New York Times, they read the Washington Post. They continue to click on the Huffington Post and Salah.com. Somehow they're either able to separate these attacks from the news that they're hoping to get, or maybe they're just unaware of them. They're unaware maybe because for so long they took for granted that faith, the bedrock of American values, was protected and cherished, but not anymore. To go a step further, you might say that Christian America has been practically complicit in this unraveling of Judeo-Christian fabric of American democracy, or at the very least complacent about it. The media attacks your churches, your towns, your values, your politics, your families, your livelihoods, your economic status, and your intelligence on a regular basis, almost relentlessly. And yet the outrage is reserved only for the media's rank liberalism. Liberalism and secularism may complement one another, but they're not the same. And it's time Christian America woke up to the cold reality that the liberal media is waging war on them, and it's winning. The tactics are predictable and time-tested. Back in 1784, Immanuel Kant wrote, in response to Reverend Zoller's question, what is enlightenment? Enlightenment is man's emergence from his self-incurred immaturity. This was Kant's condescending way of saying reason is for smart people and religion is for idiots. And, of course, Karl Marx and Marquis de Sade similarly suggested religion was an opiate of the masses. Today's Kants and Marxes and de Sades are far less eloquent, but they're still making a living by making fun of religious people. So every time Keith Olbermann calls pro-lifers religious jihadists, or Chris Matthews says Sarah Palin's faith isn't normal, or Katie Couric calls Christian values repugnant, or Newsweek says evangelicals are fanatical, or the New York Times says Christianity is hypocritical, or Bill Maher says religion is a neurological disorder. This should make Christians and all Americans really angry. Unlike the juggernaut that is Fox News, their ratings and circulations are tanking, thanks to a wholehearted abandonment of objectivity during the 2008 presidential election. But also, if these media outlets are going to speak primarily to the secular and atheist elite fringes of American society and ridicule the mainstream, they should be marginalized to the fringes of the media as well. And instead, they're marginalizing the majority. I want to give you a few brief examples of exactly how this is happening. It's covert at times, sure, but it's also very overt and obvious. so I had a lot of material to work with. Chris Matthews, while discussing Sarah Palin in 2008, said that her acknowledgement that she preys on big decisions wasn't normal. He also said, "Why does everything from this group," meaning Republicans, "sound like the 700 Club?" So for Matthews, praying, something 90% of the country does probably once a day, isn't normal. And his MSNBC colleague Rachel Maddow has echoed this sentiment before, calling the National Day of Prayer awkward and an assault on her freedom of religion, as if the prayer police were coming to her home, made her get on her knees at the barrel of an AK-47 to say the rosary. Katie Couric interviewed the father of a Columbine victim who suggested that this uptick in school violence and shootings was because abortion had delegitimized the value, the sanctity of life. Upon hearing this, she decided it was important that she warn her viewers that some may find that view repugnant. Never mind that more than half of the country probably agrees with him. There's the fact that it isn't her job to hand out warnings or editorialize in a news report. She's an anchor. She tries really hard not to be perky so that you know she is an anchor and you take her really seriously. Newsweek's Lisa Miller is a repeat offender. She helms a column every week called Belief Watch. Like she's on the top of a building with like a sniper and a scope, like watching belief for you. It's like MacGyver. She'd be like, Belief Watch, Lisa Miller. So she's used her column to, among other things, characterize students at a Christian college as fanatical, fundamentalist, cultural crusaders. She's criticized Pope Benedict for being ugly, not in character, his face. She finds his face ugly. She's claimed the Bible actually supports gay marriage if you read it right. Okay. Never mind that she also pens an annual hottest rabbis list. This is Newsweek's religion scholar. Martin Bashir, famous for interviewing Michael Jackson, described a Catholic community in Collier County, Florida, as a Catholic Jonestown. If you don't remember Jonestown, it was the site of the largest mass suicide and infanticide in history. He also called it a Catholic Iran. Joy Behar suggested on The View one morning that parents who teach their kids the creation story should be charged with child abuse. Now, I know Joy, and I know that she was kidding, but that's a sentiment that actually has been echoed by a number of her colleagues. And it's not just invective. It's not just the opinion makers. It's also a subtle and sometimes not so subtle mocking of Christianity, the kind of condescension toward Christian America that Hollywood perfected ages ago. And it's on your nightly news broadcast. ABC News' Dan Harris in 2006 filed a report for World News Tonight about the increasing popularity of Christian businesses. As is customary in the liberal press, he made use of some cutesy, condescending wordplay to bring home just how funny all this faith business is. So he says, at Irene Trammell's Christian Fitness Club in California, you can work your thighs while you proselytize. And Mark Gaddow's Christian Faith Driving School in Maryland gives new meaning to the old bumper sticker, Jesus is my co-pilot. Hilarious. And when it comes to politics, forget it, the gloves are off. During the 2008 campaign, the liberal media wanted us to believe that Mike Huckabee was some conspiracist who was putting subliminal messages into his political ads. Ads that merely wished Americans Merry Christmas. The liberal media dispatched dozens of reporters, and Maureen Dowd, to Alaska to investigate Sarah Palin's creepy Pentecostalism. And they had her speaking in tongues and cavorting with witch doctors and banning library books and curing homosexuality and hiding condoms all over Alaska. Meanwhile, Anderson Cooper told us that Barack Obama's black liberation theology under Reverend Wright had nothing to do with actual issues concerning voters. And the New York Times told us that Obama's faith was none of the voters' business. So any appearance of objectivity was gone the second Obama announced his run. So why the attack on Christian America? Why the attack on the values of 80% of the country? I mean, it's not a very good business model. But if you've seen the books at MSNBC and Newsweek, you already know that it's not a good business model. So I think two things are going on here. I think, one, this is unsurprisingly political. I think that the liberal media thinks that if it can successfully characterize Christian America as being crazy, fundamentalist, dangerous, it can also successfully characterize conservative America as being crazy and fundamentalist and dangerous. And conflating the two is very helpful for them in giving you a news story, because Christian becomes a stand-in for conservative, and conservative becomes a stand-in for Christian. And two, I think liberalism by definition is uncomfortable with fixed value systems. It's a total life philosophy that lives predominantly in a world of moral relativism. Meat is murder, but abortion's just fine. Capitalism is the boogeyman, but please don't take away our private jets. Christianity is scary, except when it helps get our guy elected. So a fixed value system like Christianity, with its do's and don'ts, I think is pretty threatening to liberalism. They don't want to be judged, so instead of trying to live up to a moral code, they insist that the moral code is itself the problem. But regardless of their motives here, our democracy, our religious freedom, a fair press, Christian values, civility, it's all in jeopardy. And I think if this issue is important to me, and it is deeply, then I have to think it'll be important to you, whether you're a Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, atheist, humanist, Wiccan. What matters is that we're all Americans, and we should all want to protect this singularly spectacular democracy. And I'm hopeful that my defense of Christianity against a hostile media is more impactful because I'm a non-believer and not in spite of it. You know, it wasn't that long ago that the New York Times was saying on its front page that we should all pray for the astronauts in Apollo 13. Or when Johnny Carson was signing off with the Navy sermonette in God Bless America. That was not, you know, a century ago. It was barely a generation ago. But that said, the situation is dire. I mean, when Newsweek devotes its Easter issue to a cover story announcing the decline and fall of Christian America, and only a small but vocal minority objects, Christian America has become complacent. And yesterday it's prayer in school, today it's the National Day of Prayer, tomorrow it's in God We Trust, and the next day it's Christmas. I mean, Christians lose these battles all the time. So it would be one thing if this attack on American faith was just part of the liberal political agenda. But when it's coming from the media, I think it's pretty clear that Christian values are in jeopardy, as is freedom of speech and freedom of religion. And because they're attacking the values of 80% of the country, they really aren't mainstream anymore. So that said, thanks for your time. Really appreciated this. And I'd love to take some questions so I know where you guys are at on this issue. Or any issue. Whatever. Let's just chat. Oh, great.
Hi, my name's Catherine. I'm with the Claire Booth Luce Institute.
Holler.
And I've been flipping through your book, and I'm not sure how many people in the audience have read it yet, but something that really caught my eye was in chapter 6 when you talk about abstinence and how they've really made abstinence a Christian thing, when really maybe it's not so much. And I thought maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. The New York Times actually had to issue a retraction for suggesting that an abstinence clearinghouse was Christian, when in fact it was secular. That sort of thing happens all the time. What I thought was interesting was that the liberal media used Bristol Palin as proof that abstinence-only education doesn't work, except they didn't do any research, because if they had, they would have seen that Bristol Palin didn't get an abstinence-only education. She got a comprehensive sex education. But research, nuance, not the job of the liberal media, not an interesting thing for them. So they'll conflate polling numbers, they'll misreport polling numbers on abstinence. They'll also say that studies on abstinence pledges, proving that abstinence doesn't really work, is proof that abstinence education doesn't work. When taking a pledge is like me saying, well, I'd really, you know, like a New Year's resolution, I'd really like to lose 10 pounds. And then saying that weight loss programs don't work. Well, just saying you want to be abstinent, that's not abstinence education. And actually, a lot of abstinence education polls and statistics prove that in Georgia, for example, teen pregnancy rates are down because of abstinence-only education. These aren't polls that the liberal media likes to put out, and if they do, it's only to challenge them. So it's a really dishonest argument on a debate that I think is important to a lot of people, and it's a shame that it's being used as a political agenda.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, I have a question.
Oh, hi.
Hi. I'm Alyssa. I'm with Claire Booth Luce Policy Institute. You said earlier that the media is waging a war on Christianity. And I'm wondering, and I don't know the actual numbers, you said it's 80% now. Has that gone up or down? Are they actually winning this war on Christianity? And should Christians, if that large of a percentage of the country considers themselves Christians, then isn't it just kind of like, oh, the media is just kind of ridiculous? Is it really that harmful?
Right. Good question. Christianity numbers go up every year by the thousands. There are certain studies that show that it's going up less in terms of the percentage, but Christianity is 80% of the country, and that includes lots of different sects and lots of different kinds of Christianity. But it will always be a majority faith. And you're right. It's almost tempting to say the media, well, they're ridiculous. They're targeting 80% of the country. That's a war they'll never win. That's exactly the problem, that I think people think it doesn't matter. Well, it does. Like I said, Christians lose these battles all the time. They lose them in the courts. They lose them in the polls. They lose them in public opinion. They lose them in the popular culture. Whether it's trying to take a cross out of the desert, canceling the National Day of Prayer. These things are happening because there's a complacency in Christian America, because they're a majority. And I just frankly wish someone would be as angry as I am, as an atheist, about this attack on values. I think it's only going to get worse. Anyone else? Oh, hi.
I was wondering what you think are the most effective things we can do to fight this battle.
Yeah.
I know that there's a lot of little things that we can do, but what do you see as the most effective ways? Is it through Christian America? Is it through non-Christian America?
Well, yeah, it's not going to be me, and it's not going to be Fox News who's going to really turn the tide on this. It's going to be Christian America. Unless they care, it doesn't matter how loudly I speak or how many books I sell. It doesn't matter. They have to care. They have to feel like they have a stake in this. Frankly, I'm shocked that there aren't protests outside the offices of MSNBC and the New York Times on a daily basis for the things that they say about Christians. And I'm hopeful, but not optimistic, that a kind of Tea Party movement would happen among Christian America to say, look, you can't try to rewrite history. You can't try to take away our religious freedom. In the way that atheists organize. They're very organized, whether it's Michael Newdow or some atheist humanist group, or the Military Freedom from Religion Foundation. They're organized. Christian America isn't organized because they're so large. And they're certainly not organized around this particular issue, and I wish they would be. Sure.
Hi, my name is Quinn. I really appreciate your expository honesty on this topic here. I really appreciate your expository honesty on this particular topic.
Thank you.
Here. We live in a Judeo-Christian society here, as a nation here, and I'd like to get your insight as far as a contrasting point of view from on a national level, where you state in your book that this central theme is the war on Christianity. I'd like to see if there are some contrasting similarities between, on an international front, the war on anti-Semitism. Thank you very much.
The war on anti-Semitism internationally. Right. Do you mean that the liberal media internationally is targeting Jews?
Jews and Christians. Well, you know, you have the whole Holocaust thing and
The whole Holocaust thing?
Christian
Right.
stuff,
I'm familiar.
you know, going on, and the anti-Israel, you know,
Anti-Zionist movement.
anti-Zionist,
Okay.
anti-Israel.
Well, yeah, I'm not suggesting that this is uniquely American. In fact, this was perfected by the Europeans. Ever since the Enlightenment, someone has been declaring the end of faith, the death of Christianity. No one believes in faith anymore. It's all reason. Well, wishful thinking, maybe. That doesn't seem to ever be the case. Every year, we remain a faithful people. 90% of the world believes in something. 90% of this country believes in something. 80% Christian. I mean, you can declare us a country of Christians and Jews and Muslims and non-believers all you want. That is not going to do anything to change the fact that this is a Christian country, founded on Judeo-Christian values, with a majority of Christians. But I think, I mean, to your international point, I mean, yes, this happens elsewhere as well. Yes, hi.
Hi. I'm an MPA student, and I kept hearing you speak here and there all about Sarah Palin, who I find absolutely fascinating. My question is whether, in your view, would she be taken more seriously by either the national media, mainstream, whatever movements you may throw in there, if she had your education, believed in education, encouraged her family members to pursue higher education, and wrote and spoke like you?
Well, I imagine, this is funny because I do some of these shows sometimes, whether they're on CNN or MSNBC, and sometimes the liberal hosts, who are usually very nice to me, will say to me something like, you know, if Sarah Palin talked like you, I might have given her a, you know, better shot. So I guess probably by those sort of liberal taste arbiters, she would have been taken more seriously if she spoke like Barack Obama. I mean, let's leave me out of it. You know, if she spoke like Obama and came from, you know, the Tony Ivy League liberal New England kind of upbringing, sure. But I think plenty of people take her seriously, including on the left. Take her so seriously, in fact, that they are scared to death of her Facebook page. I mean, she writes a Facebook note that changes policy. So I think it's a mistake to assume that they don't take her seriously. They try really hard to make you not take her seriously, but I think people take her pretty seriously.
They wouldn't attack her so much if they weren't afraid of her.
You're absolutely right. Hi.
Hi, my name is Megan Mueller. I'm actually working on a gubernatorial campaign in Maryland,
Okay.
not Ehrlich.
Okay.
And it is for the Republican Party, conservative guy. And we just found out last week that the Republican National Committee has awarded Ehrlich $1 million towards the campaign, and we get nothing. So our, I mean, obviously there's many issues with that, but kind of on a bigger scope, not necessarily asking you to attack the RNC or anything like that, but what is your thought in terms of the RNC supporting kind of more moderate candidates like Christ and Ehrlich? I mean, they're pro-choice, and they are, you know, not necessarily for the Second Amendment, things like that.
Yeah.
And in looking at what the Tea Party is looking for in their new candidates in the 2010 elections, I mean, my guy is Brian Murphy. He's 100% pro-life. He's completely pro-Second Amendment. Why, I guess just kind of an opinion, why do you think the RNC is supporting the incumbents and the middle of the road when the Tea Party and Christians are looking for more conservative and more pro-life and candidates
Well, I
like
don't
that?
really know what the RNC does anymore.
Well, that's
part of it, too.
I mean, I know they like to have a good time. But, I mean, and I really like Michael Steele.
Sure.
But I don't really know what they do. I mean, I don't really know what their influence is. They're not really raising a lot of money. They're gaffe-prone, which is distracting. And they don't, at least recently, they're not acting very seriously. I mean, what was that initiative like a year ago? They wanted to write some kind of amendment or resolution that you had to call out socialism when you saw it. That's preposterous and really silly and stupid symbolism, and be boring. Be boring, be C-SPAN. I want to know that you're getting stuff done. You know, when you're Fox News or you're MSNBC and you're acting like, you know, you're on The Tonight Show, that doesn't make me feel like you're getting stuff done. And I wish that the RNC would be a little bit more serious. You know, I don't know if that answers your question about your guy.
Yeah, no,
but
sort of. It's just kind of what we're seeing from the RNC and from Republican influences across America, really, is they're supporting the middle-of-the-road incumbents because they think they want to gather the independents. Why are they not?
Well, to their peril. Supporting Christ is going to be a disastrous decision for the RNC or anyone else.
Yeah, it's just, I guess it's more just kind of a comment or just an observation that they're supporting.
I wish I could tell you. I'm not inside the head of the RNC, and I bet it's a really weird place if I were.
Yeah, I actually just interned there at the beginning of this
Oh,
year.
yeah?
It's
Weird?
interesting.
Oh, good.
It's interesting. That's all I'll say.
Well, I think that's it. Thanks again so much for coming out. This was a real pleasure, and pick up a copy of Losing Our Religion, the Liberal Media's Attack on Christianity, and I'll be happy to sign it for you. Thanks, guys.